Good evening, everyone. I am your host and instructor, Laney, and welcome to Spindle TV, your best source for CNC CAD/CAM training videos. Spindle TV is brought to you by Digital Woodcarver, inspiring your creativity and providing you with the tools to create your own unique masterpieces. Good evening, everyone. Hope you all are doing well tonight. We're gonna give a few minutes and let everyone get settled in, and then we'll get started. Tonight we're going to go over a couple of things. We're going to talk about last week's project when we were making the three, relatively useful projects. One of them being the tablet support. We're going to talk about the overall design and the change that needs to be made. We're going to briefly discuss that. We'll probably pick that up tomorrow night or something. But as far as looks and everything, it looks fine. There's some aesthetics and stuff as far as the pegs that need to be adjusted and all. This is made out of cherry, this particular one here. But one of the things is when the tablet is on here, it's topple heavy. It wants to topple over because the base is not substantial enough. The base needs to be wider and the legs need to be extended out. So we're going to briefly discuss that overall design and things, and then we're going to jump into the main topic for tonight's class, which is answering some of the frequently asked questions. So a couple of weeks ago, a week and a half ago or so, I asked you, ladies and gentlemen, to post some questions, and so that I may go back and provide answers. And these questions and answers are going to be part of our frequently asked questions document that's being created, that's going to be available on our website to any newcomers as well as existing customers and all. And we're going to kind of be able to provide links to certain questions and topics and things. So I want to let everyone know I appreciate you posting your questions and keep them coming. I know that you're not seeing answers right now, but the answers are going to come in lieu of a post. You'll probably see a post with an answer, but also we're going to go with some of these Ask Laney type segment videos where I answer your frequently asked questions on the computer. And if there's a question and so related to the machine and all, I'm going to try to post some of the classes from the machine or in a place where I can answer questions at the machine and stuff. Dennis, you hang on to that one, buddy. You hang on to that question nice and tight. All right. All right, we're going to be working off the list in the Facebook group of questions and stuff, and then if we have time, we'll definitely go into some of the questions that you may want to ask live for those of you who are participating tonight. Dennis, that would be a question for the epoxy people, my brother. I don't have all the answers. So we'll leave that one at that. And also, the first thing I want to do is I want to talk about the tablet holder project, and what needs to be changed for it to be an effective piece. Now, overall, I like the way it looks. I mean, I had my tablet on it and everything, and I was using it the last day or two, and I had to put weight on the base to keep it from tipping over. I just wanted to, with it stands free on its own, but once there's weight on there, it wants to topple over, and that's because the base is one, too narrow, but also not long enough. The base leg should extend out past the holder and all. So let's take a look and see if we can revisit that, and we'll get over. Wayne, welcome. Wayne, by the way, I have not forgot about you and your design help. We'll get together as quickly as possible. Over the next couple of days, I'll set up an appointment with you to go over those designs and all. All right. So let's switch over to the Vetrix. And depending on my, there we go. When I ended up cutting my piece out on this particular project, I ended up changing the size of my board to what I had. Now, originally when this was designed and we were talking about this class and everything, I had it set up for a 12 by 10, and I didn't have a 10-inch wide board in the shop. All I had was a maximum of, I think it was about a 8-inch board. And so I ended up having to reposition some of the parts. But one of the main parts here, one of the main problems is this part, the base. And for the base to be effective, when that arm is reaching over, for the base to be effective, for it not to be front heavy, is the width, overall width of the body of the base, in really in all three of these directions, just needs to be a little bit more stout. And then with that stoutness, these legs need to be extended out a little further. And from my measurement that I measured, let me remeasure that real quick. We're looking at about all together with the, however I divide it up, basically with the base and the legs, it basically needs to be extended out another 1.5 inches. And you know, whether I decide to go through and stretch it, you know, that 1.5 inches, or if I decide to change the body style and then extend the legs. I don't want to provide the files to the group yet until I'm 100% satisfied, because luckily the screen on my tablet for the second time now has shattered from dropping it. I got a little clumsy with my tablet, and it's an expensive lesson to learn when you drop your tablet. It's like $100 and something a pop for new screens. But I put the tablet on after I brought the piece in, and the first thing it did was just tip over, you know. And so I don't want to go too much on it. Now, one of the things that I did do is the design originally called for I think I said something about making this out of like 3/8 inch material, 1/2 inch material. I did change it to a 3/4 inch piece of material. Like I said, I had to change my board size and move the parts around to, you know, cut out of the board. And all in all, it came out fine. I like the way it looked. It's a pretty cool looking piece, but it's not functional. The aesthetics could be the frickin' Mona Lisa, you know, as far as woodworking projects go. And if it's not functional, I mean, what the hell good is it? And right now, the only piece that needs to be changed or adjusted is the base. It's got to be extended out a good 3 inches. Did I say? I lost the number again. Yeah, 3 inches, a good 3 inches and all. So we will. I'm gonna go back to the drawing board on this one and adjust and see if I can run another test and see how we do before we finish that up. But the lesson was not necessarily the project, you know, we were talking about different projects and all. It was just the approach, you know, the joinery, working with dog bone fillets, T-bone fillets actually, not dog bone, sorry, T-bone fillets, and you know, how to create the pocket cuts to cut the tenon for this two-parted piece and things, and all. But I would love to have a finished product file to provide you guys and girls to make your own if you ever wanted to, or, you know, see if it's something that's practical. Now, I made the entire piece out of cherry, but I didn't have any cherry dowel stock, and I could not find my DIY dowel making jig that, you know, that I basically hammer pegs through, and it, you know, creates dowel stock for me. Couldn't find it anywhere, so I had to use standard dowel stock. So I wasn't a fan of that right off the bat because of the nice cherry piece, and then the, you know, the oh hell, what are they? They're not oak. I think they're poplar dowels or something, and I didn't like the color combination. All right, so my intention was that we were going to finish up this class today. And you know, and then move on to the next class tomorrow, so on and so forth. But because of the failure, you know, you can't, it's the only way to explain it, because of the failure of design, and the flaw, I'm going to postpone this, the part 2 of this, finishing this up and creating the tool paths and going through everything until I'm going to wait until I get a functional project. And what I'm going to try to do, it's going to be very tough, but what I'm going to try to do, if I can get my, lack of a better term, act together, I'm going to try to, when I come up with projects and all, right now they're kind of rudimentary, you know, little simple things. You know, I'm trying to stick with, you know, basics and teach little lessons and stuff in here. But I want to try to get a little bit more advanced, not advanced, don't let that word scare you, but just a little bit more, something, you know, things that make you go you know, just to you know, spice it up a little bit, because you guys have a lot of you have far surpassed this level of you know, lessons. There's still lessons to be learned even in these smaller projects and stuff, but, you know, it's time for bigger and better things. And my hope is if I get bigger and better with the teachings, it'll make you bigger and better, and maybe you'll learn some things that you don't know, you know, that you haven't thought about or come across, and that'll make you push yourself even more, and it makes your products, you know, advance and things, and ultimately makes you money when you're selling these new cool things. Also, I need to step up my game, and in order to do that, I want to be able to I'd like to be able to come up with the curriculum for the classes, and then actually I have a finished piece to show. Ultimately, that's my goal, and it sure would be helpful if I had an apprentice or someone in the shop to help with that, but it's just me. All right, all that. Did I make any changes? No, I didn't make any changes. No. Okay. And while we're in here, let's go ahead and open up a blank file, and I'm just going to go with a 12 by 12 for some of these questions and demonstrations and stuff, and some of them don't even relate to the Vetrix software. Some of them have to do with the CNC USB controller software or the TNG. Now, in the past, when I've answered questions or tried to open up the CNC USB controller, it had locked up and gave me black screen and everything, and all, and caused a lot of buffering and all. So I didn't experience that. I don't believe I experienced, or relative to this, it is the same steps in the CNC USB controller software. It is the same steps. So let's see if I can open the TNG software without causing black screen. Now you are going to see a black screen for just a moment while it asks me if the program can make changes, but we'll see if we can get that open. Alright, so you guys are already getting a lot of buffering going on. Okay, well, we are in a severe downpour and everything, and I do not know, because I'm wired in, I'm not wireless or anything, I do not know if that has anything to do with it, with the buffering. Hopefully not. I'm watching the same live stream you are, as well as the chat room. I have a kind of a dual window, dual screen going on, and I'm not seeing the buffering, so please let me know, because I don't see it. The buffering's not happening on my preview of the screen, and all. So there's the only thing that with me is there's a good 2-minute delay from where I'm at to where you guys are. So I'm a little bit ahead of you, and then you're going to be hearing me say that in just a few minutes. Like right now, you guys should have just experienced the black screen that I was talking about a few minutes ago, and I'm just now seeing it on the preview. All right, let's see if we can get through this with minimal buffering and all of that stuff. We're going to try my best. All right, so these questions are not in any particular order. They are being pulled directly from. Pulled directly from the post that I put out about the frequently asked questions. If I did not get to your question in here, I'll get to it in another segment, or I'll answer it on the Facebook group. But let's start off while we're in the TNG software, because it looks like there's really only 1 or 2 questions about the TNG. And let me make sure that you guys are not on the black screen. With William, Debbie, and Todd, other than those 3, is anyone else? Show of hands, or yes and no's, however you want to do it. Is anyone else experiencing bad audio, buffering, anything like that? All right, before we get into it, Dennis, yes, I did check it. I did look at the dog bone fillet versus the T-bone. The dog bone fillet brought the, with the radius that I needed for my bit, brought the corners out way too far, exposing those cuts under the joinery. The appropriate fillet for the mortise and tenon joint is the T-bone fillet. Okay. All right, so Wayne's experiencing some buffering and little buffering and all. So, okay, good. So intermediate buffering for you guys. If you'll bear with me, we'll get through it. Now let's go into the questions. So I'm not gonna name like the person who asked the question. I don't know. Yeah, I'll just leave it as the question. And so question number 1: how do you bookmark a toolpath so you can stop and return to a given point? How do you bookmark a toolpath so you can stop and return to a given point? Well, in the software, let me go ahead and open up a toolpath. Let's see here. I would go under, what do I got for some toolpaths rolling around here? Where's my documents? This is why y'all should heed my advice about having job folders and all that stuff. Let's see here. This is not my normal design computer. Okay. All right. So I've got a toolpath open here. You're not going to be able to see the preview or anything of that particular toolpath at this time. But when you are there's a couple of ways that you can do this when it comes to bookmarking a toolpath, so you can stop and return to a previous position. Whether you're in the CNC USB controller or you're in the Planet CNC TNG, the first thing that you can do is you can pause in the CNC USB controller, and when you pause, a pause box will pop up on the screen, and it gives you the opportunity to bookmark that line right there. And then when you bookmark and click stop, it will highlight whatever line that you've stopped on, and it'll bookmark it. It'll save it as a bookmark. In the Planet CNC software, when you're in pause mode, there is no prompt screen for bookmarking, but you do have the opportunity to under program bookmarks, you can set a bookmark, you can clear, you can toggle between bookmarks, and the what am I trying to say here? The when you're running, let's say that we're running here and we pause, we don't want to stop, because when we stop, it would take us back to line 1, you know. So we want to pause, and in the CNC USB controller, it gives you that pause mark. Well, when we're in pause, and I wish I was in simulation mode, I wish I was at my machine, but we will have the opportunity to select or set a particular bookmark. Under the program menu, you have the these 3 menus here: lines, MIDI, and bookmarks. Now, the select all bookmarks, you know, or select previous or select next, these do not, those are like if you go through and you have multiple bookmarks at different positions and things. Now, under the bookmarks set, now there's 2 options. There's a tool block, which you can, I don't know if you can see here, this highlighted block right here, that has basically from this point on has created a bookmark starting back from my tool change. So it creates a tool block for that tool, so it kind of highlights that entire block for that tool. Well, our tool changes, we don't have automatic tool changers and everything, so that you know, really wouldn't apply to us, but individuals can actually block out, whether they lock that block or they delete that block, or you know, by highlight it so they can rerun it, whatever the case may be. They have that opportunity by setting that tool block. They also have the ability to set a particular spindle block, and the same reference. And now I'm at line 1, you know, the start of the program. So depending on where you're at within the program, let me clear all these. When you're bookmarks, come on, bookmarks, the spindle block will basically from the speed and everything that you're using, it's going to basically highlight what you want. There's no way to really define this, so that I'm finding out right now. And I think, and what I'm having a hard time with, guys, is I'm in simulation mode. I'm not connected to my machine, so I'm not getting the menu options that I want, and it's driving me nuts. It's killing me. It really is, because I'm like stuttering on my words, going, all right, where the hell did it go? But we have the ability to come in and change things within a job. But how do we bookmark in simulation mode is what I want. That's my question to the world. Ask Laney, how do we bookmark in simulation mode? So bear with me a second. Here's my, let's see here, options. So start from select line. That's the options that I usually see when I right click. Start from selected line, start from, a particular end and all. I'm not seeing it in simulation mode, so I'm gonna have to jump over here to the advanced. Start from bookmark to bookmark, from beginning to bookmark, from bookmark to end. And in order to do that, let's go ahead and clear. Let's start over fresh, and let's clear everything. And let me grab a line. I wish I was connected to a machine, because without that pause mode, I don't know if you can see, my pause is inactive type scenario, so it's not letting me work. But one of the things is the line that you pause on, alternative number 2, write down the line number. When you load up your program again to continue, you come down, locate that line number, right click, and start from that selected line. Okay, that's alternative number 2 without actually physically setting a bookmark. You just start from the line that you previously stopped at, and you would make record of that line. The question in hand was, how do you bookmark a toolpath? And unfortunately, it's not going to let me show you how to bookmark a toolpath while I'm in simulation mode. So it's not even going to let me hit my little play button to kind of simulate a run, a job run. Dadgummit. I had to start off with the hardest question of them all. Not the hardest, but the one that I wasn't prepared. I should have, this is what I'm talking about. Should have gotten inside this software in simulation mode and made sure I could answer the questions properly. So there is a bookmark option that presents itself in the menu when you pause in TNG. There's a bookmark option, and then from there you have the opportunity to select all the bookmarks, select the next to go to the previous. But in the machine tab, you have the option to start from a selected line, start from bookmark to bookmark if you're just bookmarking blocks, like that tool block or that spindle block, or there's a certain segment. Let's say that you are you ran a profile cut, and it didn't cut quite deep enough, so you got to go into the Vetrix software, recalculate with a little bit depth, and you bring it back in, and you don't want to run it. You don't want to run it all the way through all the pass steps and all. You just want to jump right to the last pass step and just run that last pass. Well, you can come down to that starting point of that last pass, and you'll be able to right click and bookmark it. It's not showing me here, but you'll be able to bookmark there, and then you can go down to the end of the pass, or if it's the end of the job, maybe it's a pass in the middle of the job, who knows, but you can bookmark that one as well. And then in the machine tab, you have the ability to start from the beginning of your program to a bookmark, or just start from bookmark to bookmark. It's only going to run that segment of text or G-code. You can start from that bookmark all the way to the finished end, and then you can start that loop, that bookmark loop, where it's just going to carve. When it's done, it's going to recarve, kind of thing. So you can kind of create a loop of a similar project, and I'll talk more about that in a future class. Looping toolpath, there's particular processes for that you would want, why you would want to run a loop, kind of repetibility type of thing. But these are your bookmark options. Now, the start from this menu, this advanced menu, and someone can please confirm this for me if you're in the TNG and you're connected to your machine. This menu should change, and there should be a bookmark option in here as well when you right click on a line. And if you're in here, let me know if that's the true statement, because I'm in simulation mode and it's not showing me the full menu while I'm in simulation mode. But the let me see here, paste from clipboard. Stand by. I'm looking to make sure that spindle outputs, tools, move to absolute position. Okay, yeah, so only under the advanced menu are you going to have the options from working bookmark to bookmark, starting from a selected line, but that, you'll have that menu here as well. And I'm not seeing that menu because I am in simulation mode. Someone can confirm that with me. But anyhow, I just convoluted that whole answer, so let's make it simple. If you're in the CNC USB controller software, pause the unit. When the pause box opens, check bookmark and hit stop. It'll bookmark that line so that you can come back and right click on that line and start from that selected line. Okay? Same process applies for TNG. However, I'm not connected to a machine, so it's not showing me the option to bookmark, but we would pause, we would then bookmark the line, and then we have the option to start from that selected line by right clicking on it. But within the machine menu, under the advanced option, we have some other options for us. So we can run from bookmark to bookmark. We can run from the beginning of the file to a bookmark. That'd be like the stopping point. We can run from a bookmark to the end of the project. We can create a loop, that it just continuously runs. If you're into kind of coding your own thing. So those are the options, and they're found under the machine tab. That is the long and short of it. And I apologize that I'm not getting the full menu here while I'm in simulation mode in the TNG. And I did not previously check this out to make sure that I would, that everything would go through. So that's what you get with live events. Now, on the TNG, how do you get your project centered on the screen? On the TNG, how do you get your project centered on the screen? Okay, that is one of the biggest misconceptions out there, and I think Dennis started it all when he wanted his board set up differently with offsets and things like that. Okay, so a lot of people think that this orange box here on the screen is their table. That is not the fact. That is not the case. Now, you can set it up to simulate your table, such as Dennis did, and everything. But what is important is this red line here. And what's even more important than that is this starting point. This is the starting point. So if you have a job that is set up to start in the center of a job, then your design, let's see if I can grab a toolpath here real quick. Oh my goodness. Okay. So, this design is set up to start on the bottom left corner of the board. And so, therefore, my start point, this green X and Y here, is at the bottom left corner of my design, which is showing here. My design happens to be falling into the grid. If this was designed to start in the center, let's see if I can do this manually. Y would be actually positive. Went a little high. Bear with me a second. Get my Y to shift down some. Let's go negative. All right. So if my design was designed to start in the center of the job, then this indicator is going to... Oh, we got black screen. Thank you for the text alert. All right, stand by. Stand by. I know. I got it, guys. I got it, guys. I got it. Peter, I got it. You can hang up. Tell him I've got it. I know I have black screen. Yes, I realize I have black screen, everyone.
Okay, you got it.
Yes. All right, thank you. Thank you all for the texts and the calls and stuff. I caught it as soon as all you have to do is text me when I hear that happy little doo-doo-doo tone. That lets me know, especially right in the middle of class time, that lets me know that something's going wrong, black screen or something. All right, so I appreciate those calls and alerts and everything, as well as in the chat. I can see that as well. Okay. Let's see where we're at here. We're going to we're going to switch back from here a moment. You'll see the TNG program pop up here in a second. Yeah, I will, Dennis. I wasn't blaming you. Dennis has a setup on his screen that puts that start point that we were so kindly talking about before black screen interrupted our conversation. That puts his start point in the middle of his table, so it kind of sets up for the middle of the table, and essentially that's all in the settings. So under the settings, and let me see if I can jump into settings without getting a black screen. I'm watching to make sure my screen doesn't go black. All right. So in the settings, under your areas of limits of the range of movement, you know, let's see here, range, your range and stuff, you can make adjustments as needed to put the points, you know, that position where you want it on that orange grid. But I do not want to convolute this, because that grid is not a representation of your table. Okay, what's important is this start point. All right, I don't want everybody going, why is my sign way off of the orange grid? Why is it over here? Why is it over there? I do not, you know, I dealt with that back with the CNC USB controller. You need to focus on this starting point. If your project is starting in the center for your XY datum position, your project will fall around this, and this will be in the center point. If your project is in the bottom left corner, then your project's going to fall into here, and this red line is going to be on the left corner with this start point at the bottom left corner. If it's at the, you know, top right corner, then your design is going to be down here, you know, in this corner. If you want it to be on the grid, then you'll have to go in and adjust your settings, your range and limit settings and things, to, as well as the user interface, to get everything moved over. And I'll do a video on that, but I don't want to confuse the issue, because then the phone's going to start ringing with, why is my design to the left, to the right, to this, that? You need to focus on this. Okay, and also I do not want you, because, you know, if you move this over to the middle of your table, but you clamp your board over here to the left, and all that gets into programming offsets in and things like that, and and you're going to end up, it's going to become so confusing for you. I will teach a lesson on it, but I'm trying to keep it as user friendly, as simple as possible. Therefore, that's all I'm going to answer about that question, Wayne or whoever asked that question, about how to get in the middle of the design. Peter, I think it was. Peter, you just put you use your mouse, drag it around. You can zoom into the part that zooms into the part. You can zoom into the tool, you know, to get your design in the middle of your screen. You can drag it around. Hold down your left mouse button and drag it around, however you want to do. But if you're physically talking about how do you get your design in the middle of this grid, that's settings. And that has to do with how you set things up. And I'm not going to get into that right today. We'll do that that's a whole separate video. All right. Now back to the frequently asked questions. I'm going to kind of stay away from the chat questions for right now, guys. We'll answer those at the end. I just happened to see that as I was going through. So moving on from the bookmarks, in the Vetrix software, how do you drop in pictures already saved in another existing project and made into a vector? Well, that's basically when you have a picture that you have traced in that would fall under my pictures. Let's see, camera roll, DXF files. Foot shape. Let me see. I don't even know what this foot is, so let's see what this foot shape is. That's not a good picture. Let me trace a picture because I don't have any pictures right now on this computer. Let's see here. Best way to do this is to import from downloads. Import a bitmap for tracing. So we're going to actually start the whole thing from importing a bitmap for tracing. I'm going to go into my pictures, camera roll, black and white, clip art. Let's grab this lion head here. I'm going to open up the trace bitmap tool. going to turn the fading off on the bitmap image. I'm going to slide it through, and I'm going to preview that. I'm going to apply it, and I'm going to close that tool. And then I'm going to get rid of the picture by turning off the bitmap layer. Now, this is a design that's already been traced. Now, I can take this design that's already been traced, and I can export it, file, export, and I can export it as a multitude of files, but I recommend DXF file. I can export it as a DXF, and now that DXF file I can bring in. I can come in and let's go ahead and delete this one. In another new project and all, I can come in and import a DXF, and now that project is imported in. It's already been traced, and I can work with it. So long story short is, once you trace an image, why go through the process of tracing it over and over and over again every time you want to use that same image or graphic in another project? Once you have it traced, I don't care if even if it's not an image, even if it's just a certain amount of text or something, or a logo, whatever it is, export it out of the Vetrix software. File, export it as a DXF, and save that file to wherever you want to save it. Create a folder and start creating a bunch of get a bunch of DXF files for importing into other projects. Once you save it, you have it. Now you never have to trace that image again. Especially if you trace an image and you spend hours cleaning up lines and things, and you want not lion but lines, LINES, you save this project and you're like, man, I want to use that lion in another project. Well, you export it out so you can bring it into future projects, especially after putting all that work into it. Alright, now I don't have a black screen, but someone's beeping at me, so let me see what that is and see if it has to do with the class. I'm answering a question for a customer teaching a live class. Alright, so export it out. Now, let's stop here for a second because be sure to check out the chat. A few people are sharing some information, which is good information. Very good. But anyway, long story short, that's how you export a picture out to be able to bring that file into a future project. An example is I have this eagle here, and with the image traced and turned into a vector, why not export that out and save that DXF file so you can import it into a future project and things. And that's what you would do. You would export it out, and you have a choice. DXF, EPS, AI, SVG, PDF. I personally, when it has to do with something I'm bringing right back into Vetrix, I save it as a DXF file. But there's all different types of file formats. All right. So let's get back into that. Let's close this. That was a good question. How do you bring images in from another file, from another project? All right. On the 2440 with the 2.5-inch dust hood, 2.5-inch dust hood. Is there a dust shoe for the machine so I don't have to use the clear skirt, Velcro skirt, clear plastic Velcro skirt? Currently, right now, we only have the Velcro skirt, but here in a couple of weeks, we will be launching this brush. Evidently, brushes have been something you guys have been exploring in the Facebook group. We have visited brushes, a while back ago, and this is similar to the style that we made back in, many years ago when Digital Woodcarver started. We revamped it so it snaps into our existing magnets, our existing bolts and all the magnets and stuff. So in the next couple of weeks, with 2 different brushes, there's going to be a brush coming to me this week from Burl and the guys, and I'm going to be testing. Yes, in a couple. Just doesn't like me tonight. Okay. Oh my goodness. Alright, let's see if we can not buffer for a moment. On the other line of hopefully when it was buffering, hopefully y'all heard some of the audio. But also in line for the owners of our digital probe, we now have a new probe tip. It is available on the website under the Digital Woodcarver accessories, and it has a point, a little over 1/16 of an inch, 0.67 tip radius to provide higher resolution in those probed projects. All right. Let's see if we can get through this without buffering. Like a champ. Look at that. It's coming. Ah, Lord have mercy. Okay. So, there's no such thing as a simple question, guys, in these frequently asked questions. Ask your questions. I'd be happy to answer them. This question is, help, and when you ask the questions, please do your best to double check before you post it. Check your spelling and your grammar and everything so I know what you're saying. I'm going to read this as it is, and I'm going to try my best to interpret it. Probably too simple, but maybe help search line to find W keywords. I still have trouble making a border. So I'm going to focus on the still having trouble making a border part. So when you are creating a project, you can create borders many ways. And it's a matter of, drawing out your shapes. Whether you edit those shapes or combine them or blend them, whatever it is that you may want to do with those shapes. You can go into node editing with those shapes, and I want to go into node editing in this one and create whatever border effect that you're wanting. And we can ultimately take all of these parts and we can weld them together after we actually select them. After we select them, we can weld them together to create visually stunning borders. We can use our interactive trim tool so that we can trim away unwanted lines and intersections to create borders, depending on what the blend mode is and what it is that you're trying to achieve. Now this is a vector border, okay? Whether you offset that border to create that double line for V carving, or the single line for profile cutting, this is a vector border. If you're looking at creating a border that is like a profile, like a piece of molding, that is a completely different thing. That's not a vector boundary or border like you see here. It is simply, we have to do one of two things when we create that molding. And so this particular design here, this is a vector border, just drawing multiple shapes, sizing those, doing some node editing for curves, whatever the case may be, and then blending those shapes together. There is a wonderful video class on the digitalwoodcarver.com page training site. It's the very first video at the very bottom, how to combine vectors to create borders. You can definitely revisit that and take a look at it. But I'm going to be doing a lot of short segmented videos. Some of you may have realized this past week that I released 5 kind of getting started videos for new customers and things. Well, those videos are being pre-recorded, and we're going to have a lot of different little topics, how to use this tool, how to use that tool, how to do this, how to do that, whatever the case may be. And then you're going to see those, and they're not going to be live events, 2-hour classes that you have to filter through to figure out what part of the class you need to be paying attention to. They're going to be direct and to the point, along the similar lines of the Vetrix video tutorials, where it's direct and to the point, very short to the point videos. You'll see those. Creating borders and all, it's basically just your imagination. Now, that's a vector border. Blending, shaping, whether you draw a rectangle and you want that rectangle to have, corners, whether you want it to have, radius corners, or whether you want to add, some style to it. All you're doing is you're just coming in here, and let's go ahead and mirror that one. Let's make sure my rectangle is centered first. And then let's take this guy and let's snap him back to the center there. And now let's mirror him properly, creating a mirror copy, flipping vertical. And we can we can select all of these and weld them together to get that kind of cafe menu style, border, sign, and things. You can create your offset, whatever it may be. Let's say, a 1/2 inch, whatever look you're going for, to create those style borders and things. You can just use a single line if you're going to do a profile cut. Okay, so it's just a matter of making borders. Is very simple. It's just a matter of combining shapes and things. But now let's talk about the actual molding type borders. So let's imagine that I have a rectangle the size of my board here, and I bring that in, I offset that rectangle inward. I'm going to go a distance of 1.5 inches this time, and I'm going to delete the original rectangle, just creating this inner rectangle. And from this inner rectangle to the outside of my profile, that distance is 1.5 inches. Therefore, my profile border has to be that wide, at least 1.5 inches wide. How do we obtain that profile border? How do we get that shape? Well, the best and easiest way is to start off with a rectangle. And for me, that rectangle is going to be 1.5 inches, that same offset distance by however tall I want the border to be. Now, if I was carving an 1.5 inch material, I might want a thick border, so I'd probably go, an inch, 1.25 inches. If I'm carving in 3/4 inch material, I'm probably going to go about 1/2 to 5/8, whatever it may be. But I wouldn't go the full 3/4. I would leave a little bit of meat at the bottom. So in this case, we're going to go 0.625 inches tall. Let me get that period in there, that decimal. And now that's going to create this shape. Now from here, I can create whatever I want the profile to look like. Now when you're creating a profile for a molding toolpath, you do not use the bottom span. A span is the vector between the 2 points, the bottom, any 2 points. The vector line, curve, or arc between two vector or nodes, let's call them nodes, 2 points, 2 nodes, that is a span. So we're going to right click on this line, put our mouse right on this line. We're going to right click and we're going to delete that span. You're only working with 3 of the lines, the top 3 lines. Now from here you can start to shape your profile any way that you feel. Now keep in mind something here. Whichever way you have this shaping, it's going from left to right, so it's going to be carving from the left to the right. Now you do have the option to reverse the toolpath. The molding toolpath gives you that option to reverse the toolpath to make it carve from right to left. But if you want it something that you're going to use in the future and there's a certain style, draw it the way you want it to carve. And in my case, I want, if I go into node editing here, I'm going to pull this down about halfway, snap to that halfway point, and then I'm going to come down and there's another halfway mark here. I'm going to come down and I'm going to snap to that. Okay, that's going to give me this angle here. Now at that point I'm going to take and I'm going to right click on this line and I'm going to turn it into a Bezier curve. I like moldings with curves. So I want that nice curve coming in, but I want a nice gradual slope coming down. And I'm going to take and come in and let's grab a circle. Let's throw it here. And then I'm going to grab a line, my line tool. And let's see here, when this cove comes in, this bead comes in, I'm going to have it come down a small amount. I'm going to take a line and draw it straight down, straight over. This line can be whatever shape that you want it to be. Oops, I didn't want that, so undo. I want it to be nice and straight coming across. I can even have it step down another distance if I want, or maybe even at an angle. Let's go with 45, 20, 40, 45 degrees. See if we can maintain that 45-degree angle, and then come across, straight across. Let's snap to it. Spacebar to finish. Now from here I'm going to just step down straight and over 90 degrees. I'm going to add a fillet, normal fillet, about an 1/8 inch radius here. I kind of like that sharp point, but I do want to gradually come in. I like that sharp point there, so I'm going to keep that. And now I'm going to use my trim tool, and I'm going to remove, the parts of the shape that I don't want. And so therefore now I have a profile. And I can soften up edges and things. I like this sharp point here. I'm going to keep that. I'll keep that sharp point there, but I do want it gradually radiusing in. And now I have two things. I have a profile and I have a path that profile is going to follow. Okay, my rectangle is my path, my profile is my profile. So in the molding toolpath, that's the only two things that we need. We need to select the path first, followed by the profile. And if you have your size and everything correctly, these lines, the straight lines, not the angled ones, will extend to the end of your frame. And once if it was overshooting it, if it was short, then that tells you you need to change the width of your profile. Now with that, I would use my 1/8 inch ball nose end mill. And I'm going to calculate that toolpath. Now notice it didn't create the sharp corners, so I'm going to go back in there. I like sharp corners. I want it looking like a mitered frame, so we're going to check off create sharp corners and recalculate that. Much better. And we're going to preview that selected toolpath. All right, let's turn this to its side, and let's kind of zoom in here and turn it around. All right, so right from let's get rid of the center rectangle so we can have the cutout so you can actually see that, so we can kind of take a look. We're going to do a profile cut on the inside of the line. I'm really not caring what size bit and all right now, because this is just for show. Calculate and preview that selected toolpath. Let's get that part cut out of there. Okay. Now, with this frame, and here let's take it up a notch. It's all right. Well, that's good. It's good there. Let's hold down my control key, my middle mouse button, and drag this over. Let me zoom in. Control, middle mouse, and drag it up. Okay, so my profile is cutting in the way I've got it designed and everything. But what if I wanted it coming the other direction? What if I wanted to reverse it? Then I would simply open up that swept profile, go back to the 2D view, and on this green node here, this green node, I can reverse the direction. Right click on that green node and reverse the direction. The node will switch over, and you can just simply recalculate it. You can reset that preview and preview that toolpath again. And then let's get rid of the middle. So whichever way you want that profile cutting. Now for me, when I'm doing a picture frame of sorts, an art frame or something, then I like the high coming into the low. I don't like the thickest part on the inside of the frame like this. If I was doing some type of cabinet face or something, I don't know, then yeah, this might be acceptable. Maybe it's kind of a raised panel type effect that I'm going for. Then yes, I need that thin area down here so it fits within my raised panel rails and styles. But for me, the way that I drew it is from running from left to right. And that's what I want. And now let's change this up a little bit. Let's close this for a second. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a change here. Let's go into node editing on this, and let's smooth this point out and create this as a line. Delete this point. Delete this point. So I have this nice little curve, just a very short slope here. And I do want to pull this down ever so slightly. There we go. And for here, let's go ahead and turn this into a arc. And I don't know, pop up a little bead there. All right, slight little change there. Now we'll go back into that toolpath and recalculate it. Reset that preview, and then preview that selected toolpath. And again, when I'm doing frames and things, I like with the thinner in coming out to the thicker frame. Picture frames, art frames, what have you. And typically on the back of this, there would be a pocket where it would fit around my canvas and stuff. Let's cut out that center. Double click on it to get rid of it, and let's pop this up into a full-on view so we can see that frame and all. So and that's another thing, speaking of exporting out, when you create your profiles and you find a profile you like, or heck, as you create profiles, export them out as a DXF. And for me, in my DXFs, under my camera roll, in my DXF files, I have my picture frame files here. Well, I don't want to overwrite them, right? I don't want to overwrite them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say this as new molding 1.5, just so 1.5 inch, new 1.5, and save that. But what that allows me to do is I can go in now and I can import those picture frame profiles, all of these. I could have done that to begin with, where I have all these profiles, these picture frame profiles. I can add this guy to the group rather than just saving an individual file and then having to delete it. Just add him to the group, and now I will export them, select them all, and export them out as a DXF. Now I will overwrite that picture frame profile, replacing it with a new updated one. And as you create profiles, add them to it and start getting a repertoire of different profiles and things. So that's how you the swept profile is how you create a border with a molding for your picture, your carving, whatever it is, or you're just simply creating the the 2D. The 2D. Now you know why I didn't type all that out in Facebook. All right, let's go back here. You guys all still with me, or did I put you to sleep? Can you do a molding toolpath on just 3 sides? Absolutely. You can do a molding toolpath on anything. So let's imagine that we'll make an arch there, 3 lines, so that would be let's say a rectangle. Go into node editing on this guy. Let's hit escape to close that tool, node editing, and delete this span. Let's imagine that that's the left leaf of our table, whatever it may be. Your profile can be any shape that you want it to be. It doesn't have to be a rectangle. It doesn't have to be a square. But here's 2 options here. So now I'm going to import my picture frame profiles here, and let me grab this guy. Get out of node editing. Let me drag him over here for a moment. All right. Now, depending on his length and width, it all depends on how wide I want my molding to be. You know, how wide I want my molding to be and things. So, in this case, if I look at the size of this, this has an overall length of 2 and 2 and 7/16, a little over. I would want, let's say, 1.5 inches, 1.5. You know, scale that down, 1.5 inches wide, and I'll use that for both. So in that molding toolpath, select your profile, select this. Now, you have the lines coming in or going out, depending on which way you want this molding to follow. This green node here, you're either reverse direction, it's going to carve inside this small arc or outside of this arc for that higher radius. Calculate that toolpath. Reset that preview that selected toolpath. If you're making the arch for the top of a window or something, and let's say that you've got to make this arch in segments, that's where tiling comes in, toolpath tiling and stuff, and all. So you can create that arched molding, you know, and then do your profile cut. And of course, your profile cut, knowing if we come into this and we open this up, knowing that we have that 1.5 inch distance, we can offset. We can close this tool here. We can offset this outward that 1.5 inches. Okay, and then we can take, depending on what angle we need to cut this at, you know, depending on what angle we need to cut this molding at and everything to make it look good and all, we can, you know, join this. Oops, I offset both. Bear with me a second. Let me offset just this one. There we go. Ta-da. I offset my other profile too. We can join this with a straight line, close it off, so that way we have the profile cut to cut the part out. So if I were to, you know, create that profile cut, and I think my ends are going to be a little off, but let's calculate that, and now we should be able to killing me. This guy right here, profile cut. This guy, calculate them so we can cut out that molding. You know, depending on what angle, you know, you needed the ends at. That's the important part. You know, so yes, you can do it on an arc. And if we did the same thing on this, if we come in here and we select this profile and we calculate that molding tool path, you know, if you're doing that leaf of that table or what have you. So the answer is yes. It can be a straight line, a curved line, arc line, whatever it needs to be. You can create that molding profile. You know, and in this case, you would most likely reverse the direction of that one because it is a kind of a high and heavy. So that way it's coming from the, you know, outside down type of deal. Whatever it is, you know, but yes, answer is yes. All right, let's go up here. Okay, so let's close this, or not close it, but let's delete all those. Okay. Bear with me as I peruse. Alright, I would like to know what I need to set up in VCarve, Pro, Desktop, or Spire in this case. So when I check the times of carving, say toolpath, it is more in line time-wise with the carving time that is stated in the CNC USB controller. So your estimated time in the Vetrix software currently, right now, if you're using the 2440 CNC, your rapid rate is 150. If you're using the mini carver, it's 125. The scale factor is 1.3. So if I had, let me explain to you a little bit about what scale factor is. So let's say I have a scale factor of 1. Okay? And my estimated time says to cut all these profiles out of my board, what have you, it's 3 hours and 56 minutes. Right? 3 hours and 56 minutes. And then I go into my CNC USB controller program or my TNG program, and I run that job. If that job takes me 3 hours and 56 minutes, then my scale factor of 1 is correct. If it takes me 4.5 hours, then my scale factor needs to be adjusted. 1.2, 1.3. How do we get that decimal? How do we get that fraction? Right? We do a little bit of math. So if I have a pop up my calendar, make sure I don't have black screen. I got to keep an eye on you guys. So if I have a hour and a half long carving, right, 90 minutes, and then that's what the software is telling me, hour and a half, and I go in and it takes me 2 hours, right? Then that would be 120 divided by 90 equals 1.3, okay? Or 1.33 if you want to be, on it. And so that sets the scale factor. So now it'll bring those two more in line. And the deal of it is the Vetrix software doesn't know how slow the machine slows down when it's going around corners, what its acceleration rate is, all of these factors that come into machining time. All it knows is the feed rate and the plunge rate and the rapid rate of the machine when the machine's not carving, moving above the board from one place to another. It only knows those three things. It doesn't know acceleration, deceleration around corners, and ups and downs and things like that. So it can't take those into effect. That's what the scale factor is. So we adjust the scale factor accordingly. If I have a 1 hour carving in Vetrix and it takes me 2 hours, then my scale factor is 2. Okay? So you just, you adjust your scale factor, and that will bring you in line. So both your estimated time tool summary in the Vetrix software and your estimated time tool summary in your TNG or CNC USB controller, it brings those two in line together. Good question. Alrighty. Okay, let's go up here. What are the rules for zeroing out the Z-axis on the digital wood carver diamond bit? Good question. Let's see here. And I'm trying to go through these. I'm not any particular order, guys. I'm just going through, and we'll let me see if I can draw this out. Okay, let's make this one a little fatter. And let's get him centered up. Okay. Oh, we're missing one thing. And I need a circle. Where's the circle at? All right. So, play along with me. Imagine that this is my diamond drag bit here. Okay. Now, this diamond drag bit is tied. Let's see if I can tie it together. Bear with me a moment. Want this to be as accurate a representation as possible, so let me get everything done, and let me grab this, and weld it together. All right, and might as well get this one welded to this one. Okay. Now, inside of the router bit holder, inside of the bit holder, we have our diamond bit, and there is a plunge mechanism. It's spring loaded. So up in here, there's a spring, inside of this holder. When you are zeroing out the diamond tip bit, typically you're either running if you're doing an engraving, you're either doing the quick engraving toolpath, profile, or pocket, depending on if you're doing kind of a fill engrave or a profile following the lines, or you can use the quick engraving, which is kind of a combination of both. That is similar like if you were doing a laser cut, but with the diamond bit you're engraving. And so with that diamond bit, your cut depth, whatever it may be, should be set to 0. Just like if you have the digital laser, your cut depth is 0. We don't want the router moving up and down, okay, when it's engraving. But with that spring, what we want to see happen is when it's in its resting position, this ball here in this little window that's on the side of the bit, when we bring this let me see if I can do this systematically. Let me get it touching on the bit. There we go. When we bring that router down, you're going to see that ball moving in that window as we bring that router down. This is retracting the spring in here, putting pressure on the bit against the material. I typically tell individuals to, on this whole slot, when that bit gets to about a quarter of that slot, quarter, half, 3/4, full, but when we get about a quarter of that slot, that's about all the pressure you need on that bit. So you would lower the Z down until you get that ball in there, that little pin, to be showing about a quarter of that window. And that's where you would zero out the Z in your CNC USB controller or your TNG. It will make the Z with that much pressure. That way when it's carving, it's putting pressure on that spring, and that spring is keeping that force of that bit, on the bit and all. So the goal of it is on the little window on the side of the shank, the holder part, you want to see that pin retract up about a quarter of that slot. To have decent pressure against the bit, with the bit against the material. That's the key to it all. That's where you should be zeroing out your drag bit. My pause, sorry about that quietness for a moment. Trying to read. Okay. I know the answer. However, as a new user, most beneficial for... So when it comes to end mills, upcut or downcut bit, where's the best place to buy bits? DigitalWoodcarver.com. Where do you think? How do I make my own spoil board? MDF is a good choice for a spoil board, but a spoil board can be made out of anything. Insulation foam, masonite, which is like that brown hardboard they make pegboard out of. MDF, preferable. That's a good choice. MDF. Quarter, half, 3/4 thickness, depends on what you want for your spoil board. But MDF is excellent. Plywood, another piece of wood. So your spoil board can be anything. But an MDF spoil board, because MDF is typically known to be dead flat, and you still want to surface your spoil board, ladies and gentlemen. Don't think that because you clamp it on the table and all you're done that it's going to be automatically parallel to the head of the router. You're going to surface your spoil board with large diameter bit. But so making your own spoil board would be a matter of running down to Home Depot or Lowe's, purchasing a piece of MDF, cutting it down to size or have them cut it for you out of their milling department, and clamp it on your table. And you've just made a spoil board. Now, if you want to get fancy and make a spoil board with dog holes for clamping or T-tracks and things like that, it all depends on what you want to do. But a typical spoil board is just an empty board. A lot of people put grids on their spoil boards, all kinds of things. Now, upcut versus downcut spiral bit. Let's talk about that. Okay, so upcut. Upcut bit has a helical direction on the flute. As it's pulling, as it's carving, it's pulling those chips and everything, those cuts and slivers up out of the cut with that upcut spiral bit. And because of that upward motion, it's also causing a slight, it's causing the top of the material, whether it be a veneered plywood or whether it be, a hardwood that's prone to chipping, walnut and things. But it's pulling those fibers, those top fibers, that top layer of fibers up and everything. So if I was doing some rough cut pocketing in solid wood, I'd be using my upcut spiral bit. If I was doing precision pocketing where I need nice clean edges for joinery like a rabbet joint, dado groove, mortise or something, then I would use my downcut spiral, because that downward motion is pushing those fibers and chips down, and everything, keeping a nice smooth edge. Or I'd use a straight bit rather than upcut or downcut spiral. Straight bit provides a nice clean cut too. Now, if I'm carving in plywood, I'm definitely going to go with my downcut spiral, because the upcut spiral is going to cause unsightly chipping and flaking and all. And that's really, it all depends on the cut that you're doing and the job you're doing. Rough cutting, if it is just a workhorse, to rough out some pockets that I'm going to be cleaning up the edges with a round over or a V-bit or whatever, then I'm going to go with my upcut spiral, because now my router bit's not having to work that hard because those chips are getting pulled out of the way. When I use my downcut spiral, it's packing those chips into that cutting path and everything, so we need to compensate for that. We need to adjust cut depth, feed rate, and all to compensate. That bit's working twice as hard now. And so for me, solid woods, just roughing out things, 3D model roughing, rough pocket cuts and stuff. My upcut spiral is my go-to bit. If I'm precision cutting, mortise, tenons, rabbets, dados, joinery type things, then I'm using my downcut spiral on that solid wood. And when it comes to plywood, I'm using downcut spiral 100% of the time. That's there. Upcut versus downcut. Where's the best place to buy bits? DigitalWoodcarver.com. Now, as a second option, you can toolstoday.com is a very cool site. Magnate.net is a very cool site. You know, there's a cool site out there that makes a few little router bits, some decent ones too. Think and Tinker. Their bits, their machining bits are really nice. Fairly priced too. Rockler, Woodcraft, you know, Home Depot and Lowe's are going to have very limited selections. They're going to be Irwins or Bosches or, you know, Diablos, which is kind of a Fruid type bit. But you know, those are for disposable bits that you need to, you know, that you know you're going to just burn up. And but for me, and no, just because the bits aren't on our site, check with us. If it's an Amana bit, we can drop ship to you too. We have a whole, you know, catalog of bits that we can drop ship to you straight from Amana. We just don't have all of them listed on the website. No, we got profile bits, we got surface planing bits, we've got all kinds of stuff. All right, so but you know, digitalwoodcarver.com, we'd love you to go there first, but then, you know, my second favorite after that would be toolstoday.com. And then if I had one local that wasn't 2 hours away, Rockler and Woodcraft. You know, Rockler's, I don't have a Woodcraft too close to me, but Rockler is about an hour and a half away. So that would be that. Why are my bits burning my project? Well, because the bits are getting dull. So when heat is what kills a router bit. So when you're dogging your bits, man, you're just forcing massive depths of cut, rapid rates of speed, or on the other side of the spectrum, too slow. That bit is spinning too slow or staying, you know, the feed rate's not fast enough, and that bit has time to just kind of linger, you know, in that area. It's building up heat. But if we're too aggressive or not aggressive enough, you know, we don't have that fine right medium, heat is going to build up on that bit. And when the heat, you know, it's like putting an iron to the wood, you know, it's going to start to discolor your wood and things. But when heat builds up on that bit, then all of a sudden it starts to, the bit gets duller and duller and duller. It's reheating and it's getting duller. So it'll start to discolor. You've got your blues and oranges and blacks and, you know, browns and things on your bit. If you're using pines and cheap wood, you know, that have resins and pitches and things in them, and you're cutting and then your bit's getting built up and you're not maintaining your bits properly by cleaning them. There's bit cleaning solutions out there on Amazon, eBay, Rockler, Woodcraft, you know, saw blade and bit cleaners. If you're not cleaning your bits, you know, properly and keeping them, you know, those are your lifeline of your CNC. You can't carve anything without your bits. And if you want to be replacing your bits every week, that's great for you, but maintain them every once in a while, just like you oil your machine. You know, clean up your bits and stuff. Take them over and scrub them, clean them. You know, when that resin and that pitch builds up, it's gonna build up heat. It's gonna start burning your projects and things. So there's a lot of things. You could be going too slow. You could be going too fast, too deep. You know, building up heat. You could have a lot of, you know, you could be carving with a dull bit, and all it's doing, it's not carving, it's burning through the wood. It's just ripping through it, you know. So when you get burning, it's time to maintain your bit and check yourself. Check your speeds and feeds and plunge depths and rates and all. You know, don't be so aggressive. Did I say that firm enough? All right, so let's see here. How do I hold down wood when I need to make a profile cut? Hot glue, double-sided tape, build a frame around it, build some kind of stop block, clamp from the side versus the top. There's a lot of different things. Check out, just Google CNC clamping and check out a lot of the different things. You know, your CNC can make all kinds of clamps. Put a frame around it, you know, to clamp. You don't necessarily have to have your wooden wedges on top. You know, double-sided tape. Not my favorite method, but works very well. It does. I got to give it credit where credit is due. But the blue painter's tape with the CA glue, you know, method. If you know, check it out on YouTube if you want to know what that is. There's a lot of different ways to hold your material. You don't, not necessarily just your wooden wedges. And then absolutely, when you're doing a profile cut, be sure to add tabs. Add tabs so your part's not moving and things, so it's being held. But yeah, you can clamp on the edge of the board on the outside. You can trap it. There's low profile clamps. There's dog clamps. There's cam clamps that you can make. I mean, your CNC can make a lot of cool stuff. Check out CNC clamping and just Google, look at some of the images and get some inspiration. Oh, let's see how. Why are my bits falling out? Why are my bits falling out of my collet? Well, one, the mill of the bit. So typically, like let's say a 1/4 inch collet, and you typically find this in a 1/4 inch end mill. Now, I've never experienced this with my ball nose bits or my V bits, but my end mills, I experienced this a lot. That collet's only going to drop down or crunch on to your 1/4 inch shank, and there's not a whole lot of room in between the fins in a collet. So let's take a look at a collet here. Let's pull up Google. Let's see if I can get Google on the screen. And when you're tightening that nut, this collet is going up into that router. It's compressing this cone shape, this conical shaped collet around that bit, and it's gripping it. Well, you only have so much room in here. You only have so much room in here. And if the mill of the shank of the bit is not perfect, let's say that you have a 1/4 inch shank bit, but it's actually technically 0.23695 or something. Well, when you go to crank this down, you can only close this up so far, and if it doesn't grip it, your bit's going to fall out. Another thing is sawdust and buildup and all. Clean your collets out every once in a while. Sawdust gets up in here and it packs up into these grooves and stuff. And you don't realize it because you're just loosening the collet, taking one bit out, putting another bit in. Take that collet off the router every once in a while and knock out the sawdust and stuff because it packs in there so tight it can't grip it. So clean that up every once in a while. But if the shank is the bit is too small and the collet just can't get around it, then you need to reach out to a Mana or a Whiteside or someone and see if you can exchange that or something. But if you got the bits from us, we'd go through Whiteside, so we're going to direct you straight to Whiteside on that one. But every once in a while, Irwins, you'll find that. I find that with my Irwin bits that I buy from Lowe's and all. A couple of the Whiteside bits I ran into where my bits were falling out. The 1/4 inch. It's only been the 1/4 inch, never the V bits and stuff like that. But always on the 1/4 inch shank bits. I don't care if it's an Irwin, a frickin' Fruit, or what. I typically have issues with bits slipping out because the shank just was milled improperly. So, and it happens. Some of them come off the line like that. All right. And then last but not least in that segment of questions, and that segment was, when do I change my router brushes? Good question. Depending on the routing that you're doing, I always recommend to either check or replace your router brushes at least every 3 to 6 months. Don't wait till you hit the start button on your CNC machine and it starts to move over to carb, but the router doesn't turn on. Check your brushes on your Hitachi router. Let's see if I can pull up a Hitachi router. Under the Bosch, it's with the butter, it's under the blue cap. But let's see if I can pull up the Hitachi. Hitachi M12. So on the Hitachi M12 VC 2.25 horsepower router, you'll see these black caps here. These are where your brushes are located. Remove the black caps, and in behind this cap will be a brush, a carbon brush that has a brass spring and a spring and a brass cap with a copper wire connected to it. You will want to inspect the brush. You'll see a brush that looks like this. It's got the carbon. This carbon wears down. It wears down rapidly depending on how much carving you're doing. So at least every 3 to 6 months, change or replace your brushes. But you would slide this out, unscrew that cap, slide this out, and you would look for chips and defects in the brush, the carbon. You should have a nice smooth groove here where it's wearing down. You should never have any chips or breaks. That could cause a bad spot in that brush and cause your router not to come on, and then all of a sudden your bit plunges down to do a cut and that router's not running, it doesn't kick on, and then, well, it's a bad day for you. It's a bad day for your piece of wood, for your router bit, for your machine in general. All because we just didn't check our brushes. So I say every 3 to 6 months you should check and replace your brushes. At least clean them. You can pull them out, you can clean them, wipe them off, brush them off, get all the loose carbon and stuff off of them and everything and put them back in. It's a band-aid, cleaning the brushes. Ultimately you want to replace them, but they're $7 a set. You can find them on eBay, Amazon, and digitalwoodcarver.com. All right. Okay. So those were a good series of questions on that one. Let's check back with the group. I kind of just went into a little rant. Let's look down here and make sure we weren't black screen. All right. Is a muscle chuck a worthwhile investment? Could be. I just recommended the muscle chuck to someone, one of our customers the other day. I had a muscle chuck given to me. I never got to use it. It was given to me to test out and things. Unfortunately, I never used it, and I ended up giving it away to another customer that was asking about the muscle chuck, and I said, here, you want this one, and try it out. So I never got a chance to use the muscle chuck that was given to me, and I never bought another one. But for tool changes, people that are struggling with the 2 wrenches or things, it does. It's nice. My fear is when I was looking at it, it might not do this when it's tightened down, but there's a lot of play in it when it's not connected. Of course, there's a lot of play even in the collet when it's not connected or screwed in tight and stuff. So as long as there's no slop in it, then yeah, that single tool adjustment, is great. You can get that grip and stuff. And I think it has interchangeable collets, if I'm not mistaken, which is cool. But keep in mind, it is a bit extension, but it also is an extension. You have a 4-inch Z height on the mini carver, a 5-inch Z height, maximum Z height on your digital wood carver, and that muscle chuck is going to take up some of that. It's going to reduce that down. So if you have a 5-inch Z height with a muscle chuck, you're probably losing a good 1/2 inch or 3/4. So you're down now to 4 1/4 Z height and stuff and all that. So but I can't, I've never tried it. I got one, it was given to me, I think by Muscle Chuck or somebody. Maybe it was a customer, I'm not sure. Somebody gave it to me as a gift, and I ended up, I didn't keep it. I didn't use it. So, but I did recommend it to another customer just recently because, they were struggling with tightening their tools and how to use the wrenches and everything. And I said, you need to just get a 1-tool system and eliminate that problem, because they were, the problem with the 2 wrenches is they were pulling on them too hard or pushing on them and things, and it was moving their machine. They were literally putting so much force on it. They were killing that collet, Dale. They were killing that collet, and it ended up moving their machine. They would lose their positioning, and they'd have to re-zero out. And I said, no, he's a big boy. He's got muscle. He's stout. I said, you're just putting too much into it, man. So I recommended the muscle chuck for him. All right.
Good night, Dennis.
All right, so what I'm doing is I'm reviewing questions. I want to get to the questions in the group that you guys are asking. That was one that was in the group. I want to get to all of them, but let me just double check here. Someone wanted to demonstrate about tramming the CNC. We're not going to get into tramming tonight. That's involved. I will do a video on that at some point. I'll get out a video on proper way to tram your digital wood carver. Let's see here. Okay. This is a good question. I don't know what the best way is to explain it. I'm doing a sign with an old piece of barnwood and using a V-bit for the lettering and a .625 ball nose for the pattern. The surface of the wood is a bit uneven. Is there a way to compensate? Probing, of course, and using the warp feature is the best way to compensate. Or you can set your Z zero position for the bottom of the material, a known flat surface, so it's you're registering always, you're working your zeros kind of off of that flat surface, so it's kind of cutting to consistent depths and things. But probing and using the warp function is going to be the most effective way. But unrelated to that, that's how you would compensate with a badly warped, carved, or uneven board. But what I want to talk about is when you're doing a bit change, let's say a V-carve with a raised effect, and you touch off your end mill, you run your pocket cut, you change bits, touch off your V-bit and run that V-bit, and you notice a line around your letters, whether it's too deep or too shallow, where it's cutting, at a different depth, well, right then and there, do not unclamp your board. You can go back. You can go and you can rerun the pocket cut. You can lower it down and you can clear out that pocket and level everything back out. But why did it happen? What was happening? It's your touch off. Okay, setting the Z0, it's not consistent. You want to be consistent, so everything is nice and level. And a good way to do this to ensure consistency is after you carve your pocket cut, and we've all know that we touch off the Z on the original surface of the material. But let me illustrate this in Vetrix. Let's get out of here. Let's since I got a router bit here, let's pretend for a moment that this is a V-bit. Okay. All right. And let's pretend all right. Let me group all these guys together. Okay. So imagine we have just done the clearing pocket path for a V-carve raised effect design. And we've got our V-bit in, and we know that, when we put that bit in, we come over and we always zero out on the original surface of the Z. We always zero out on the original surface of the material, not the Z, we always zero out the Z on the original surface of the material because that's where we've set it up from. Well, if I'm getting inconsistent cuts, maybe that my touch off was a little too heavy, so now my cut is coming a little deeper, so it's leaving a little groove, or maybe it's a little light, so I'm kind of getting a little kind of lip around the letters and things like that. Well, what would be a way that we could compensate for that? We can actually move the bit in, and you can even use your touch plate if you want to. But let's say that this pocket cut here is 1/4 of an inch deep, right? 0.15, a quarter of an inch, whatever, you know, I can bring my bit down and touch off in that pocket. Kiss right down to it, not with my with my control key. And I can, in the software, the TNG software and all, I can come in and tell it that position, instead of zeroing it out at a 0.01 or, you know, what have you, I can type in negative 0.25 in my Z box, telling the software that this point that my bit is sitting at right now is negative 0.25. Okay? And when I program that in, I type that in, now that has essentially set my 0 for me, but it is said that, hey, this is my depth of cut. And that will create, that bit's not going to go any lower than that. So when this V bit does its V carving to that depth of 0.25, you know, it's going to come in and it's going to carve wherever I just touched off. Now, if you're not comfortable with touching off and knowing, you know, what happens if I touch off too far or this and that? Well, if at all possible, if you can throw your touch plate into somewhere in that pocket and be able to hold it nice and flat, you can touch off. Let's undo that. You can touch off on the top of that touch plate. And now you tell that program that you're at, any guesses? 0.24, not 0.25, 0.24, because you're sitting 0.010 of an inch up from the bottom of that pocket, that 0.25 pocket. Now you're sitting at 0.010, so subtract it from there. And now the software knows where it's at, and that will create a consistency between the V-carve cut and the pocket cut. If you can't get a consistent touch off because your V-bit might be poking into that touch plate more so than the end mill did, because it's a wider surface area on that end mill versus that sharp point of that V-bit and all, and you dimple your V-bit, whatever, you know, you're just not getting a good touch off and you just can't get it and you're getting these witness lines, well then zero out the machine. And when I say zero, I don't mean zero, but come over and move the machine over, touch off in the bottom of the pocket or on your touch plate in the bottom of that pocket, and program your Z for that depth. Tell it what it is. This is this depth, you know, and then it will know. That's essentially the same thing as setting the Z0. Okay, 0.25 inches from this point up is 0. You know, so that is, you know, that's another way of yeah, and let's see here. Let's see if I can find Howard Wayne. Tell me if the Dave Garbett question is in the group or in the list that I'm reading off of in the Facebook. If it's in the group, I got to scroll up in the group. Let me know, Wayne. All right, let's see what we got here. How do I emboss or do a 2-rail sweep for 3D carving on decorative pieces, and what bits do I need? Well, a 2-rail sweep or embossing requires the Aspire software. So you must have the Aspire software to create an emboss, which is create a 3D component, 3D model. Or to use the 2-rail sweep tool. And with the 2-rail sweep tool, see if I can find my Aspire here. Make sure my Aspire doesn't throw me into a whirlwind. Chat. Okay. Stand by and I'll check out Dave and Wayne. Check out. Stand by. I'll answer that. Just let me finish this one up and then. All right, so the purpose of a two-rail sweep is to have a profile or a design follow a path. You have two-rail sweeps, you have one-rail sweeps, you have cylindrical sweeps and stuff. So with a two-rail sweep, you are either drawing your lines vertically, and let's draw some lines. Or you're drawing your lines horizontally. And of course we need two, so I'm going to hold down my control key and drag this one over. And I'm going to drag this one up and hold my control key. And now I need a profile. So I'm going to node editing on this. I'm going to delete this span. Very simple profile. We're just going to turn this into a Bezier curve. Let's pull this one down and let's pull this one up. Okay. So once I have in my two-rail sweep tool, I have to first select my guidelines. Those are, and then you're going to come over here, and those are your drive rails. Okay. You want to make sure that your rails are driving, your start points are in the same direction. Those arrows, these arrows here, you want to make sure they're in the same direction, or else it twists your profile. Once I have that and I use that as my selection, then I select on my profile and I have options. I can scale the cross section with the wisps. I can sweep between the spans. I can fill the center, whatever the case may be, and I can apply this. And that's going to ultimately create that two-rail sweep. Same thing is if I had my horizontal and this profile, that 3D view, so it's just you're drawing your two lines, your curve. It doesn't now, the two-rail sweep doesn't have to be a straight line. It can be an arc, a curve, Bezier, again, just like we were showing with the molding toolpath, if we were making archway molding or things like that, we can use that. We can use the two-rail sweep for that as well. And we're just drawing that path, those two lines, and then we're drawing our profile, whatever it may be, our shape or our profile, to sweep between those two lines. And so that is all there is to the two-rail sweep. And it can be even geometric shapes, guys. So let's say that I have a 4-point star, not a 5-point. 4-point. Okay. And I come in here and I scale this down holding my control and shift key, and I bring in a smaller version, right? So now my two rails are the outside of this little bitty profile and the outside of this big profile. So with my two-rail sweep tool, I've got my profiles selected, and those are my guide rails, my selection. Now I can actually add cross sections to this. I can reverse the rail the way that it's flowing. I can remove cross sections, which I haven't added cross sections yet. but I can make it a start point. I can swap the rail order, you know, which basically reverses. So there's all kinds of things that I can do in here. And I don't want to scale the cross sections here, and let's see here. Let me get my mouse. Oops, let me select it. I keep right clicking. I want to left, 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 right, left. Stand by. All right. Anyway, sorry. As I was saying. So let's grab this and this. If I were to do a 2-rail sweep, I would have to have a profile, whatever it may be. So let me draw that. I forgot that's what I'm sitting there looking for. I'm like, where's my profile? I'm going to use a rectangle tool. Big fan of the rectangle tool. With the rectangle tool, I'm going to go into node editing on that. I'm going to delete that span, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that point. Okay, that creates this triangular shaped profile here. All right, so now as I come into my 2-rail sweep and I select my 2 rails, my drive rails, okay, and then I select my profile, when I click on the node after the profile selected, it shows where this profile is going to, you know, be swept across. Well, if I right click, now that it's showing these profile lines and things, as I right click, I can add to all of the rail nodes. I can add these, and I have nodes at each of these points, and that's, you know, that's typically what we want. We want to divide this up into segments. This is what creates that kind of nautical star shape and things. And so now when I apply this, the shape is getting applied to all of these segments, but also these segments. This one, and let's look at the 3D view here. My star is cut off on that one side. And let's not scale it. Sorry, let's apply that. Let's tone that one down a little bit. There we go. In the bottom lines are a combination of 2 lines and a profile. Or you have 2 profiles and a profile. You know, basically these are my lines. This center and this outside edge. That's my 2 lines that it's following. And they don't have to be open vectors. They can be closed, like this star is a closed vector and everything. Then draw out your profile and create it. All right, so very good question. All right, so let's go back up to Dave. Dave had a question. Let me see if I can track her down. Thank you on that compliment about the bits, Howard Groves. Todd Roop. I found this, tell me if I'm reading the right one, guys. I found this site over the weekend. It's more for scroll saw cutters, but I have used a few PDFs into Aspire, and it worked great. Wanted to share this with the group if it helps. Google Steve Good scroll saw. Yeah, Steve Good's a friend of mine. got a lot of nice patterns. Trying to go back, Dave, and find... Laney, if you have time, could you show how to change or switch the project 90 degrees? Was trying over the weekend, no luck. Okay. All right, David. Laney, if you have time, could you show how to change or switch the project 90 degrees? Was trying over the weekend with no luck. All right, so let's get back into the Vetrix VCar Pro. Okay, I'm going to take this as one of two ways. I'm going to take this as one of two ways. Oh, 90 degree turning, 90 degree in TNG. Okay, 90 degree in TNG. Gotcha. I thought you were talking about 90 degree in the in that, you know, in the Vetrix. Thank you. Let's see here. What do I got here? Let's open up an actual toolpath. What is this? What is this? World's greatest grandma. That was a Mother's Day project. Okay. So, let's first of all get rid of all the offsets and zero out the machine's absolute position and the machine's work position. Let's get proper here. All right, so I want to turn this 90 degrees because I happen to have clamped my board. Wasn't paying attention how I clamped my board, so I've got it rotated. I don't want to unclamp the board because I just got it secured the way I want it. The clamps are nice and firm. Nothing's moving. It's square with the table. So how can I rotate my design in the software? How can I rotate my design in the software? And here's how you do it. Program... menu at the top, rotate 90 degrees and click OK. Now you can rotate it multiple times depending on which angle you're wanting to go. Like let's say you didn't rotate it and your board's not facing that way. Come in here and rotate. You can go another 90, you can go 180, you can go, you know, whatever the case may be. But you're rotating around. In my case, I'm working in the bottom left corner. If you were working off center, it'd be rotating off center, you know, right? So rotate, and I'll go another 90 degrees, you know. And ultimately, you know, let's say I want to go, that's where I want to be. That's how you rotate your design in TNG. Now, once you've done that, once you've done all your rotations and everything, remove your offset. Okay? And, oh, you sugar booger dooger. I need to get my start point up there. Bear with me a second. Absolute position 20. Work position 20. Work offset 20. Tool offset 20. All right, so I'm gonna have to work with that offset. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I got to work with that offset. So my start position is going to be positioned off of my red line, no matter what. Due to the rotation, but it's still going to carve the same. So this is your start point. Ignore the red line for right now. This is your start point. This is 0. So anyway, rotate it 90 degrees. How can you do this in the other program, the CNC USB controller? Same thing. The menus have not changed. Go to Program, Rotate 90 degrees or 180 or whatever it is that you want to rotate, and you're all set. So you just same thing, machine or the program menu, rotate 90 degrees. All right. All right, let's get rid of that. Offset. I'm a dumb man. I was sitting there, I kept hitting the offset button and everything, offset, and I threw off my rotate. Bear with me a second. Turn on the damn transformation. Program rotate. I've still got that shift on. Oh, I don't remember how big this project is. I think it's 4 inches. So shift on the x-axis, 4 inches. 4.00. Let's get rid of all those other numbers. Shift is moving this around on your start. On the y-axis, we're gonna make this 1 inch. 1 inch. There we go. Tardar. Had to shift. I had that shift in from earlier that I had to get out of there. The shift to 0. But anyhow, so program, rotate your 90 degrees, and okay, whatever you rotate, that's it will recalculate the toolpath. It will carve over there and everything. It'll readjust the toolpath accordingly. For whatever it is that you're doing. All right, and it's the same menu. Program, rotate. Here, I'll even throw in a question that you didn't even ask. Hey, Laney, what if I have a project? What if I have a project that I made for a 12-inch by 12-inch board, right? 12-inch by 12-inch board, and I want to carve it, but all I have is a 10 by 10 or a 9 by 9 or 6 by 6 or whatever. Is there any way to scale it in the TNG software, or do I have to do that in my Vetrix software? Well, for a temporary, if this is a one-off, I just want to carve this project and I don't have my 12 by 12 boards. All I've got is a cut-off piece, and maybe it's 10 by 10 or something, and I want to just scale it down for this one carving. Then I'm going to do it on the fly in the CNC USB controller or the TNG. But if it's going to be a permanent change, I want to change it from 12 by 12 to 10 by 10 permanently. Then I'm gonna do that in the Vetrix software. But if I'm doing it on the fly for kind of a one-off or something, then I'm gonna go to Program Scale. Okay. Now, 1 is 100%. Okay, so you got to do some math. 100%, right? So if my design is 10 by 10, let's see here, 10 by 10, 10 into 12, that's 1.2, so 80, about 80%. All right, 1.0 equals 100%. All right, so 0.80 is 80%, 0.60 is 60%, 0.45 is 45%. You get the idea so far. 0.125 is 12.5%. With me on that? So I want this to step down. I want to scale it down. And now on the Z, do I want to scale the Z height, or do I want to maintain the Z height, the thickness and stuff, whatever it is? I'll go ahead and scale everything down. I typically only scale the Z by 90. I don't go the full 80. You know, I only do a very small amount, 90% of it's that. And click OK, and that's going to scale it down for that job, for that run. All right? All right. Okay. So, David, does the system really know if you set your Z depth using the touch plate? Does the system really know if you set your D depth using the touch plate? Yes, because the sensor gets set off. So you have an I/O sensor, whether you know, and if you're in the CNC USB controller, you'll see the sensor active down here. But in the software, you'll see the. Let's see if I can invert it just to make it look like it lights up. No, I can't get it to light up. But anyhow, input 2 would light up green. That means that continuity signal, that grounding signal, is active. It locks up all the axes, and you know, they can't move or anything. That's why I always tell you don't have your stuff touching wood and all. So it absolutely knows that you know, you're touching off. But keep in mind, guys, let's go to our settings file in TNG software and go down to measure. Make sure your movable sensor doesn't say 0.0630. Make sure it says 0.01, the thickness of your touch plate. That way, if you do the automatic touch off, you're getting an accurate reading. Okay? Make sure it says make sure it's set to 0.01 in that measure. So file, settings, down to measure, movable sensor should be set to 0.01. That's if you do the automatic touch off. You know, you make sure you have the right sensor programmed into your settings. Let's see here. So does the system really know if you set your Z depth using the touch plate? This was posted when you were showing how to set your depth when changing to the V-bit after a pocket cut. You said to take away 10 thousandths when using the touch plate, but to use full 25 thousandths when setting the bit without the touch plate. Yeah. So you can either eyeball it, Dave Kinsey. You can either eyeball that bit coming down into the pocket. You can eyeball it and say, yeah, that's kissing that, and type in 0.24, because whatever you tell that program it is, it is. If you tell it it's China, it's China. You know, if you tell it it's an inch, it's an inch. So you want to tell it the exact depth, you know, so you're not cutting into your table, of course. But so you set it as 0.25. But if I touch off on my touch plate, my machine's going to stop automatically when it makes contact with that touch plate, because that sensor is going to get active. Boom. And when it's active, letting me know I'm making good contact with my touch plate, then I'm going to go into my Z box here in the TNG software or the CNC USB controller. I'm going to go into my Z box, and I'm going to type in that negative. Don't forget the negative sign, because you're down in the wood now. 0.24. And I'm going to lock it in, and I'm going to tell it, hey, I'm sitting 10 thousandths of an inch above my 0.25 start depth, which would be 0.24. Now I'm sitting down negative 0.24 below zero. You know, we're just telling it where it's at. So it absolutely does know where it's at, you know, when you're using your touch plate. But you can eyeball it, or you can be a little bit more accurate and use the touch plate. Alrighty. Now I had a question come up earlier, and if I haven't seen your question in the group, please forgive me. But I had a question come up earlier about, you know, tiling a design and things like that. I'm gonna move these into a different layer, make this one active. One thing that I really want to stress to you guys and girls, okay, is when you're tiling, let's say I'm making a 30 or 48 inch long sign, 12 inches wide, okay, and I create my design, whatever it may be. Dadgummit. Dadgummit. Center. None. Apply. Oh, my font was messing me up. All right, one more time. You can do it. You can do it. Okay. So, if I have a design and I create a toolpath for that design, whatever it may be, in order to tile in the Vetrix software, and there's a whole video on this in the Vetrix tutorial library, which is phenomenal. It goes in depth on it. But we have what's called a tile manager. And the tile manager allows me to exceed my cutting area of my CNC version along the x-axis and the y in both directions. Now notice it says invalid origin starting point. So in order to do a tiling toolpath, you have to have a starting point at the bottom left corner. So we're going to do that. And we're going to recalculate this toolpath. Now that I have that toolpath created, we can open the tile manager. And in the tile manager, I can tile the toolpaths. And let's say for that 48 inches, I want to carve every 18 inches. Right? I want to break up the tiles every 18 inches for whatever reason. I could just do it in half, in two halves, every 24 inches, you know, and I update those tiles. Notice you'll see tile 1 here, you know, if I were to preview this cut. And if I were to preview tile 2, if I were to reset my preview and just preview tile 2, right, it's only going to cut what's in there. And then I'm going to save that toolpath. And when I save that toolpath, I want to have my tile manager open. Okay? When I save the toolpath, I want to have my tile manager open. And the reason for that is notice how it says output tile toolpaths up here in the top right corner. When I tile this, and I save this file, if we went and looked at that file, that folder, you would see I have two toolpaths here, T1 tiling toolpath and T2 tiling toolpath, right? So tile 1, tile 2, it breaks it up for me and everything. Now, the crucial part of this, that's not the hard part, you know, setting up your tiles, whether you set it up feeding along the x-axis or you break it up in individual tiles where you're cutting multiple boards to assemble together, or you're just feeding along the Y, which you can't do on your digital wood carver. It's either X or individual tiles, your choice. But creating the tile toolpath is not the thing. It's how the setup, where it all comes down to is the setup on the CNC machine. And so we've got our board here that we're going to clamp on our CNC machine. And let's actually draw the rectangle, the table out properly. It's 48 inches in length. It is 30 inches wide, and my cutting area, all right. So this is my tabletop right here with my T-tracks and all that wonderful stuff. But what you want is you need some kind of guide, some kind of straight edge, some kind of guide to put along your board, to clamp it on your table. It's something that your board references up against. Okay? It's something that your board references up against. And on that guide, that whatever it is, I use a ruler, so I use the number 3 mark on my ruler. But on that guide, that straight edge, there is an identifying mark. This is going to be your 0. This is where you zero your bit out. Okay, that's where that bit is getting zeroed out, on that corner of that board. And to make it more appropriate, you actually want that board up on right against the edge of that board. There you go. All right, so that's our 0 point. And so we always start off with the front edge of the board at that 0 point. And when we carve that tile 1, T1, it's going to start from there, and it's going to carve tile 1 and come back home. Now on our board, 24 inches down, 18 inches down, whatever we set our tile at, we have a mark, an identifying mark. And after that first tile gets carved, then that board gets slid down the table. Let's do this. That board gets slid down the table until that mark on our board lines up to a nut, to a T. All right, lines up perfectly. And then now we carve tile 2, which is the second half. If I'm a little worried about not getting my line just right, maybe I can't draw a straight line to save my life, whatever the case may be, then we have a backup in here. Tile overlap. Okay, so we can overlap back into the previous tile by a certain distance. So if I want to go, maybe 0.06 and everything, then it's going to create an overlap that when it goes back, it'll go back into the previous carving before it carves the next one. So, you'll create an overlap gap. You see this pink mark here and everything. So it'll go into that, that it'll carve beyond that, that overlap, so that when it starts, even if you're off, you're going to get a consistent, seamless carving, if you're, sure about that and stuff. But it's most important. It's all about the setup. And if you carve this, and this first tile is in one position, and you carve this second tile is in another position, well, one of two things has happened. You have, excuse my better part of language, shit between your board and your straight edge, and it caused it to be off the straight edge a little bit. You're not running exactly straight, so it's just off. And then, of course, as you slide that board down, all that debris and stuff goes with it. And then when you come up against it, now you carve this one, and all of a sudden it's down, a friggin', half inch or whatever it is, it's off. Whatever the reason is, this straight edge is, your board is not completely straight, 90 degrees to the machine. When you put that straight edge on the table, take your router, and a lot of you who have the Hitachi router got a pretty cool little tool in your Hitachi box if you didn't throw it away. It's like an alignment pin. It's got a half-inch shank on one end, flip it over, a quarter-inch shank on the other, and a disc, round black disc in the middle. And you can put that up in your router, and you can run that along that edge. Put it in your router and run your router all the way down from edge to edge to ensure, and you would do it on the other edge, you know, or the outside edge. That's fine. It just depends on where you put your straight edge. But you would run it down that edge to ensure that straight edge is running absolutely true to your machine. Because if it's off in any way, your carving is going to be off. All right, it's all in the setup. Take extra precaution and extra time in setup. You're setting up your clamping so your router's not hitting your clamps. Your straight edge, you know, make sure if you're going to use a wooden straight edge that it's absolutely straight. For me, I went down and spent $9 at Lowe's and bought a Swanson ruler. It's an 1/8 inch thick, which gave me a perfect lip for a straight edge. It's very low profile, so I didn't have it interfering with any of my cuts or my router, especially when I'm carving on the outside of the edge, when I'm doing X and Y tiling. You know, and it slides right into my T-track. I got holes on it to clamp it down. But it's all in the setup. Your success in a tiling job and that seamless carving is going to be how much time you spend in the setup, and just double check and double check and double check, you know, before you carve that, because wood ain't cheap. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to end. I'm going to end on the tiling note for right now. That's going to end this segment of Ask Laney. I don't know if it was boring for you. I don't know if it was helpful. I don't know if it answered any questions. Hopefully it did. I'm going to try in the shortest way possible write out the answers to this, because these questions and answers are going to be on the website. So I got to figure out the short, direct answer without my wordiness in there for all these questions. So if there's anything you didn't quite catch, bear with me and I'll get them up on the site. But hopefully this was somewhat informative. Maybe some of you stayed with me. Some of you went to bed a long time ago. It is getting late, and we are going to end it here. I want to thank you very much for your time spending with me and your questions. Keep those questions coming, and I will do my best to keep answering them. I will go back through the questions in this video, guys and girls, all the comments and things, and if I missed any from here, I will answer them. I will come back and answer them in another Ask Laney segment. All right, guys and girls. Howard, everybody, good night. Dave, Wayne, everybody that joined me. Debbie, I appreciate you as always. Todd, everyone. Y'all have a great night, and I guess I'll see you tomorrow with an actual project. No more Q&A. We're gonna ask project. You can ask questions, but we're gonna do something, and I'm really gonna strive for something cool. I promise. We're gonna do something that you're like, oh, I gotta make one of them. We'll figure out what that is. Until tomorrow, I'll see you soon. And Wayne, before I leave, I'll shoot you an email here shortly, Wayne. It might not be this evening, but I'll shoot you an email tomorrow or something. But we'll set up a time this week for tomorrow, the next day, for your to go over your designs and see what we can clean up with those. All right, everybody. Y'all have a wonderful evening.